so on. But for you, my dear, it is ever more challenging, and it is the life that you have at this moment is an acceleration, you see, because isn't it harder to find God in the changing of a baby? Or the getting up when it's still dark to the sound of an alarm, and so on. But if you can find God in these spaces, you have truly experienced God. Hey everybody, this is Anjie Hipple, and I'm here on Your Superior Self.
Mama Bear, how are you tonight?
I'm so good. I'm so good.
I just feel like I've been listening to so much of your content lately and just vibing with you. And we had a conversation pre-interview, and I just feel like you have this motherly presence about you that it's so nice. It's like so warm. Like I just feel a high resonance with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's really, really important to me. I know, our mothers give us life. They bring us into the world, and they're the first people to love us, and treasure us. And I think, at my stage of life, my kids are grown and out of the nest. I've got some grandbabies now. It's a good time where, spiritually speaking, our hearts can get really super, super expanded to just bring more people into the circle of our love. I remember when I was pregnant with my second, I thought, I just don't know. Am I going to be able to love this baby as much as my first? I couldn't really conceive of that because of the love I felt for my firstborn. And of course, the minute that little guy popped out, I was like, oh my goodness. Yep, I do. My heart just got stretched to receive another one, and I think as spiritual moms and dads, I think more than spiritual leaders and teachers and channelers or whatever the roles are that we have in this wild, spiritual life we have, I think the ones we need the most are moms and dads, right? Because those are the
Sure.
ones that fill the big holes in our heart that, our moms and dads ideally are the ones that always have our best interest at heart and never give up on us and always see the best in us. And so I think in our spiritual life, in the work we're doing, that's a huge opportunity, is to reparent somebody,
Mhm.
fill in the gaps, those sweet spots in their soul, and help them to be all they are.
Sure. Yeah, I feel that for sure. Especially with like your messaging too, like channeling, your messages through channeling have been like really resonant with me. And although you call it weird, I still think, it's a lost technology, really. I think we're just remembering that. I think we're all remembering how to do that. I think we all can do that in some sense, right? Just some are
I
Michael
agree.
Jordans, right? And some of us are Scottie Pippen, right? Like it's just depending upon like your practice, and your commitment to that. But you for sure, right? Like I feel like every time I speak to you, there's like this high energy vibe, and you talk about how comparing it to Dr. David Hawkins' work, levels of consciousness at a rating scale, and like bringing it in at like was it 750 or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, when I started into my spiritual awakening, I was somewhere in the 400s. I don't remember exactly where. I had a friend to calibrate me early on, and just the growth can be so exponential when we really get committed to surrendering. And when Judah comes in, Judah is actually in the range of 5,000. And archangels are typically in the range of the 100,000s. And so when we bring through their energy through a channel, it's just, it's mind blowing. It just kind of removes, it's like a really strong, forceful wind. If you ever have a really strong storm come through across your property, if there's any dead things, dead leaves, dead limbs, they're going to get blown loose and off, and so channeling Judah and these really high vibe beings is a lot like that on a personal level. As they come in, it's just blowing out all my egoic debris. It's enabling me personally to really ramp up my own personal level of consciousness. And I just feel so eternally grateful for that. And I know other people feel it too when they get, in the presence of the messages. So I'm thankful because, before I started channeling for some years, channeling wasn't like on my bucket list at all. I really appreciated channelers a lot, and I was growing and learning and awakening through channel messages. But it wasn't on my bucket list. But I'll tell you, just before Judah came, for some time before that, I was feeling pretty desperate. I was sick of my ego. I was sick of what I was doing to myself, what I was doing to people that I cared about. I was sick of the stuff in me, the pattern responses that weren't working. And I really wanted an acceleration of freedom for myself. And Judah brought it, in spades. So we're very grateful.
I would love to tap into some of your story just to give the guys and girls out here listening like some context. Like you say, it wasn't on your bucket list. I mean, I feel like I know I felt it in my life as we experience different higher vibrations or a resonance with higher consciousness, like things happen to our lives where it may dismantle them, right? Our old programming, our old belief systems, right? Like it can shake them up and it can feel like you're going through hell essentially. But you're like an example of like going through hell and then breaking through that and becoming something magnificent on the other side. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. And I almost, Trey, I wish, that for a split second or 5 or 10, I could almost let people experience some of the depths of my hell, because, it's easy when we see somebody that's really vibing high and they're really living the dream and, but I wish they could know how hard some of those moments were before that. But, I was raised, I came to faith in Christianity when I was 8. I have a little different understanding of it now. I remember sitting in a church service. I was 7 or 8 years old and hearing the preacher talk about hell and that I would be going there and that everybody would go there that didn't receive Jesus. And I remember, thinking, man, I love Jesus so much. To me, Jesus represented love and peace and joy and goodness. And I remember thinking, man, I don't want to go to hell. And so something in my heart was waking up in that moment. And I remember having the experience of a presence come around me. And it was sort of like a cloud. It was full of love. It was full of joy. I felt completely, perfectly loved in that moment. And I equated that with the message that I was hearing. And, the preacher said, come on down the aisle if you want to receive Jesus. And so my two little feet just went boop, 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 down that aisle, And so I really believe Judah or the presence of Jesus or the Holy Spirit or Source really came and visited me in that moment. Unfortunately, because of the culture and family and upbringing that I had, I made a lot of misassociations in that moment too. And I began, instead of, as a child, I didn't understand that, I just had this amazing experience of being completely, totally loved. I should put my faith in this experience and this presence. But instead, I just listened to what all the adults told me about my experience. And I understand now that the truth is probably maybe I was the only person in the room that had an experience like that. But yet I was relying on adults to tell me or define to me what was happening. And, when you have an experience, you don't need a belief because you have the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in the faith and, along the way, up until my mid-40s, every now and then, every 5-10 years, I would have something really profound and personal happen to me in the way of I'll call it a visitation perhaps it was Judah or the Holy Spirit or maybe the presence of Jesus. I don't know for sure, but it would be just enough to keep me on the hook and keep me coming back. And I still had that association in my mind that these amazing miracles were happening because of all the, I don't know, nights I spent at church or reading the Bible. I probably read the Bible cover to cover many times in my lifetime. And, when I got into my 40s, my dad passed away suddenly. My 27-year marriage was coming to an end. My family's business was being embezzled. There was just a lot of crazy things going on. And I was waking up. I was awakening. There were little seeds being planted in my life. One of them was somebody gave me the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Listening to, I used to sneak around and listen to NPR, and that was like really bad, because I was in a very strict conservative household, so little things like that. I just started breaking free. I went for acupuncture. That was huge. It probably sounds silly to a lot of people, but I was raised in an environment where that was like bad, weird, woo-woo. That was like setting yourself up to be a scene from an Exorcist movie, Like, so I just started making these little moves towards freedom. And when I got out of my marriage, I began encountering these synchronistic things like Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Man, that just messed me up, right? It was just blowing my religious mindsets all to bits. But then about 6 years into this, really, I found my new life partner. He's a spiritual partner, and he'd been walking the walk, talking the talk for years. He lived with Osho in his young days. Had met Ram Dass. He'd been a serious meditator for decades, and was a healer. And he really held my feet to the fire and gave me a new perspective. Anytime I was operating in a false kind of paradigm, he would call me on it consistently and lovingly. I remember, one time in the beginning of our relationship, he said to me, and he said many times after, this same thing: I can't be in a relationship with somebody that doesn't believe they create their own reality.
Wow.
And yeah. So, and he would say it anytime I would try to blame him for my stuff, or maybe it really was his stuff and he knew it, but he knew that me blaming him for it and playing the victim was not going to set me free. And he just would keep saying, I can't be in a relationship with somebody that doesn't believe they create their own reality. But little by little, things began dawning on me. And a lot of it was painful because I was so brainwashed. And it was so deeply ingrained to me to play the helper, the rescuer, the savior, to be the good girl, the good wife, the good daughter. These were all what I came to understand later through Judah, is these are deeply ingrained egoic constructs in my life. My ego was firmly attached to these roles. And the truth is, my soul, who I really am, is neither a wife, nor a mother, nor a daughter. My soul is much more vast than that, and can't be really defined by those roles. So when I went through 6 years of just real ego stripping, listening to enlightened beings. I learned how to sift through spiritual material and discern, what was confronting my stuff and not just making me feel good. I learned the difference between personal development and awakening and enlightenment, because personal development, that's where we're just trying to fix the ego or prop up the ego or bolster the ego by being more than what we are, right? And then I began to shift into this understanding, oh, but the real deal is when we realize we're perfect. We're perfect. And we really are, we're enlightened beings. We're just stripping away the things that are covering up the glory that is in us. And there is no lack, and there's nothing wrong with us, and there's nothing to be fixed. We're not deficient in any way. So when I got into COVID, when COVID happened in 2020, in that spring, early on when COVID was just hitting the news, I came down with it when our stepson was home from college. And I got really sick, and I had actually a lot of complications. And I ended up being chronically ill, pretty much just sitting around in a chair doing really nothing for 2 years. It was pretty devastating. I was of no use to anyone. But this was a big setup. This is a big setup for me to go this last mile of, and I'm not saying I still have a lot of ego still to go, but I mean, I was really put in a position where I had to surrender, and there were days when I'd been sick for so long and I had no assurance that I would get well, that I thought, okay, God, I'm really pissed at you. Take me out of here. If this is all that my life is going to be, just me being an invalid in a chair. And I had to even surrender that and say, okay, if I spend the next 30 years being of no use to anybody, anywhere, if I spend the next 30 years in this chair, I can accept that. So it just came to this really deep level of surrendering everything, all the roles, all the doing, all the trying, all the fixing, and just let everything be what it was. And I just let myself be what I was. And it was right about that time that Judah just came in like a train, just blazing through our lives. And I mean, in a 24-hour period, we were turned upside down. And from the day that I started channeling, I was healed completely. The rest, my body was completely restored after that. And I was up and at it. Yeah.
What was the first message?
Oh, so cool. I love that you ask. Well, I was, like I said, in these last bits of surrender, my third grandchild was ready to be born any day. My sweet daughter lives about 3 or 4 hours away. And I had to accept the fact that I couldn't be there for the birth. And that was the only place I wanted to be in the world, was just be there when that sweet baby came. And I didn't have the strength. So I was surrendering it. I knew that was all I could do. And that evening, Chuck and I were sitting on the couch watching a beautiful channeler named Wendy Kennedy. And Chuck just kind of casually looked at me and he said, you could do that. And I thought, okay, like what else? All right. I mean, at this point, I was open to anything. And that night I went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night with this strong presence in the room with me, just overwhelming. And I felt as if there was a baby in my body. I could feel the head, physically feel the head pushing down on my pelvic floor. I could feel my womb contracting. I could hear the thoughts and feelings of this little baby. And I could sense these really strong impressions in my mind of that it was a boy, all about his character, his nature, why he was coming to Earth, what he was going to do while he was here, his mission, his personality, the kind of heart he would have. And I was just overwhelmed, all of my senses and my body, with this sensation. So when I got up in the morning, I just sat down at the keyboard and I thought, this must be the channeling. And I started typing, and I typed out the whole message. And then they started saying a whole message about the little boy. And our name is Judah. And we're an angelic collective. And so on and so on and so on. And so when Chuck came home that evening, I said, I think they're here. And their name is Judah. And it's going to be a boy. And it was a boy, a beautiful little boy named Ember. Precious.
That is beautiful. And your
Yeah.
life has totally changed since then.
Oh, sure. I mean, we're still pinching ourselves. And one of my prayers is that I don't stop being grateful, but pretty much every day we're channeling together. Chuck and I sit on the couch. It's very intimate and sweet part of our relationship. We'll just, watch our TV and eat dinner like all of you guys do. And then at some point in the evening, I'll just feel physically like I've been set on fire, as if there's a stove burner in my body and somebody turns it on high. It feels a lot like a hot flash. As a matter of fact, for a long time, I think they were visiting because I would get a hot flash the same time every evening. And I thought it was just menopause, but now I realized it was them. It was them knocking on the door. So we always know when they've come, and I'll turn to Chuck and say, they're here. I say, okay. And we scramble around and turn down the lights and get our recorder out. And Chuck asks questions and Judah answers them.
Hmm.
And we just share them with the world.
You said something pretty interesting, right? Like in one of your previous episodes, I don't know if it was with Alex or someone else, but you said you had a feeling that Judah was like your future self, right? Or your future higher self, or a future part of you that was enlightened, or that being, right? And I thought that was so fascinating because,
Yeah.
like, what if that's how we're all connected, right? Like, it would make sense to me, right? Like we experience this place as linear in time and space, but ultimate reality isn't that. But to be able to experience your future self or something helping you along the way and connecting with you, that would make sense to me that you would be able to connect with that and bring through these messages.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk about that for a couple minutes because hasn't been something I've been able to share before, and I think it's important to people. Getting to know Judah was, it's kind of like a dating relationship, right? You don't tell everything about yourself on the first date. You just kind of give it to people in little bits as the relationship grows and expands and as you can withhold it. Well, Judah was like that. Judah would tell me a little bits along the way. And as the relationship grew, they would tell me a little bit more about why they were working with me and about myself and the relationship with them. And so what unfolded over time is I began to understand that they are an angelic group of about 350,000 individual angelic souls. And when they speak through me, they speak as one voice, all of them together. But what they explained to me is that I actually am one of them. They're my soul family. Sometimes that's called an oversoul. And so I actually, at some point, I think it's probably been many lifetimes ago, but at some point I decided as an angel, an angelic being, that I wanted to come and have human experience. And so I incarnated from Judah into a human experience. And so when I channel them or when they speak, it feels like home. It feels like me. It feels like the me that I always wished that I could be. It is my higher self. And so they have explained it to me that way, that they are my higher self and that I'm a part of them. And I think that might be the case for a lot of, folks we listen to like Daryl and Bashar and different ones. I think it's probably pretty likely that a lot of us, once we enter a channeling relationship or meet our guides, that they're part of our soul family.
Did they ever tell you what they experience at their level?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like what their life is like, you mean,
Yeah,
in their high
yeah,
dimension?
yeah.
Oh, yeah. So they've they've explained that they can travel through any dimensions. They can travel up to the 12th dimension and also to the third, the fourth, the fifth dimension. But they primarily work in the fourth and fifth dimensions. And they do that because they love humans and their passion is really to help humans make a transition from a third and fourth dimensional life into a fifth dimensional life. And my understanding from them is that, oh, it's okay. If it's okay, Judah wants to explain that.
Sure.
Okay. So what we want to help you do, my dears, is transition into a clarity, a clear space of being your higher dimensional self all the time in a stabilized, permanent, and consistent way, experiencing yourself as a vast eternal soul, a fractal of God, dropped into the body and the personality that you have in this earthly incarnation, but experiencing yourself as creators, designers of your life, and as perfect, and empowered, and understanding that you have control over everything in every moment of your environment at all times. You are the creator. And so this is our primary concern, because you see, the truth is, my dear Trey, and all of you listening, is that the next step on your evolutionary stop is to be angelic in nature like us. So we are like your big brothers and big sisters, your mothers and fathers. We are teaching you, showing you, modeling for you what you are becoming. You see, that you will be like us. Yeah, good. Yeah, one of the illustrations they gave to me recently is that we're like a kaleidoscope. So if you think about a kaleidoscope, your body is like the cylinder, and all the fractal bits, the bits and bobbles and gems that are inside that create these shapes, those are all the parts of your life, your 4D life and your 3D life, such as where you were born, how you were raised, what your traditions or political, religious ideas are, your skills, your talents, your very unique perspective on life. Those are like all the little colorful bits. And they're contained in the body of who you are. You're known as Trey. And then, but as you hold that to the light, you see the light of consciousness, and you, the creator, you get to turn, see this thing of your life. It's all integrated. See your body, all the parts of your 4D personality and perspectives and emotions and thoughts. And you hold it up to the light of consciousness, and you move it any way that you want. And you're the creator of it. You're the one who created the whole thing, the kaleidoscope and all the parts. You see, and as you keep holding it up to the light, and you can constantly shift who and what you are. And every moment that you turn it just a little bit, there's a brand new expression of something miraculous about you. You can be something completely different in the next moment than you were yesterday or the day before.
I love that. So turning that kaleidoscope, right? Is it just our perception and our perspective, or is there actually an energy and a power inside of us that we can harness to change it, if that makes sense?
Well, you are the one holding this kaleidoscope of your life, dear. You see, we want to tell you what a good day for God is. A good day for God is when Trey realizes he doesn't need God, because Trey grabs hold of the kaleidoscope and shifts it and shifts it and shifts it and shifts it until he finds exactly the fantastic view that lights him up and gives him joy. You see, and he sees himself as this beautiful burst on the cosmic stage of something that can never be recreated again or recaptured, but it's to be thoroughly enjoyed and relished as a pleasure in the moment. You see, it is you. You are all those fractals of you, when God is shining through them, are exquisite and can never be recaptured again.
How do we realize that though, right? Like, how do we know we're turning that kaleidoscope? Like we come here, right? And we live in these bodies and we live in these stories, and then we start learning about different theories and philosophies that, like Neil Donald Walsh and different spiritual teachers, and we hear it and we love it and it resonates with us. But then we wake up every morning and we have to go to work. We have to do this. We have to do that. And it doesn't feel like a very high vibe way to live, right? So how do we tap more into that? How do we live our lives more at a high vibration and realize that we are a part of that?
Good. Let's answer that. What a great question. Well, you see, all of it's a big setup for the glory of you coming forth. You see, there are some who have the, you might call it privilege of living withdrawn, hermetical life, maybe in an enclave or in a place where there's little required and they can simply meditate and focus on spiritual pursuits and so on. But for you, my dear, it is ever more challenging, and it is the life that you have at this moment is an acceleration, you see, because isn't it harder to find God in the changing of a baby? Or the getting up when it's still dark to the sound of an alarm and so on. But if you can find God in these spaces, you have truly experienced God and the being of God. And you will find that little by little, as you keep yourself in the moment and you give yourself with love to the task that's in front of you, and you keep holding in your imagination the vision for where you are headed, you will feel it shift and shift and shift, and it will shift. And so, my dear, one very small adjustment, just the tiniest move of the kaleidoscope that you can make even in this moment, instead of I have to, say, I get to, you see. And it's all very temporary. It seems like perhaps it's a pattern or a rut that you won't get out of, but we will tell you that it's not true. You, my dear, are headed for beautiful things. You are headed towards a 3-day work week. Get ready. You are headed towards long, luxurious, empty board spaces with your wife and children. You are headed into whatever you can imagine in your meditation. So when you experience the resistance of the alarm clock going off, or whatever the resistance of the moment is, find your place of surrender, just even if it's for a few seconds. This is what is in this moment, and I get to, and I'm thankful. And in that, things will begin to shift and shift and shift. Now, we'll give you a tool here, a tool that we share much through this vessel, and it is the power of your imagination. You see, when you are in a dream, my dear, you're dreaming at night. While you're in that dream, isn't it real to you?
Yes.
And you don't realize you're dreaming until you wake up. True?
Yes.
Now, but what you're living day to day here is still very much also a dream. And so allow yourself to be a little more childlike and more dreamy, and begin to use the power of your dream state at night. You may program your dream before you go to sleep. You say, angels, source, higher self, I give you permission to come and remove any constructs in my thoughts and emotions, any old energies or patterned ways of thinking, behaving, and doing. I give you permission to remove them while I sleep. And I ask you, Source, to give me a vision of all that I am, all that I can be in my sleep, you see. And you program your dream in that way. And then what happens is there is a miracle that happens, because perhaps you and others listening may say, but I don't have enough time to meditate, and I don't have enough time to be a spiritual person because I'm busy just doing what my life requires. Well, you have 8 hours at night. And this can become a workspace for us. We angels are like little elves in Santa's workshop. During your dreams, we can go to work, to create all kinds of magnificent things of your dreaming. all things on your wish list for Santa or Source, you see. And we can use this space of time to your advantage to begin shifting your perspectives, shifting you towards faith, shifting you towards high consciousness. How about this, my dear? How about if you spend the next 8 hours of your sleep in a blissfully high conscious state in the 7, 8, 900s? Yes. And then when you awake, all of a sudden you will be in a different place than you were before you went to sleep. Judah's talking about, what they've shared with us is that one of the ways that angels help us, they can do for us what we can't do for ourselves, and they're always working behind the scenes on our behalf. So let's say we're on mile 53 of our spiritual journey. They can literally pick us up and drop us down at mile 349, right? And they can move us forward to such a degree that we can't really find our way back to our old patterned ways of behavior. And that's what we want. So your nighttime is a wide open space. Edgar Cayce, when he was a child, he would lay a book underneath his head at night, things that he had a test on at school the next day. And when he would wake up in the morning, he would know everything in the book and make an A on his test. And so there's, that's another thing we can do. We can even hold in our hands the book of an enlightened being. Like if there's, I'll name a few books that I think that's on a serious path, Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, Power versus Force by David Hawkins, Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. Those are books, sometimes I just hold them in my hand and I just enter a meditative state. And I might just read one line of it. But what I want to do is I don't want to just read words on a page. I want to have the experience that master had. And so I read a line and I ask the powers that be to give me the experience and the deep inner knowing of that truth that master had.
Wow. That is what I am searching for. That
can happen. You can do it. And Chuck and I were talking the other day because something's shifted lately in this personal sessions that I'm doing with Judah to where it's just raw power and there's very little talk. Judah's not even saying much. It's just people are just getting bombarded with energy. And I was telling Chuck about how thrilled I am, like so excited about it. And he said, talk is cheap. And I'm like, yeah, isn't it though? And so all the things that we're doing right now, we're doing in the hopes that we can get a glimpse of a truth that's going to really set us free or push us over into an experience. But once you've had an experience, nobody can take it away from you. And what I want for everybody that encounters Judah's work, I don't want them to ride my coattails. I mean, I'm happy for them to, if that's of service to them. But I want them to have their own experience.
What are some common experiences that people are having for them, right? Like, are they having some mystical peak experiences for themselves?
Yeah, a bunch of the people that take the course with us start channeling at some point. And that's exciting. Sometimes they'll type up their messages that they're getting and they'll say, do you think this is just my mind? And I'll read it and I think, oh no, that's not just your mind. That's definitely a powerful message.
Well, how do you tell the difference, right?
That's a great question. So for me, I think from the outside looking in, people might think that this life is like fireworks and explosions or color bursts or something. It's really not. It's just as simple as a thought impression. But how you know the difference between just your head and your higher self or an angelic being is that your thoughts are completely peaceful. There's no resistance around it at all. When you think the thought, it might even seem like a ludicrous thought to your head, but when you think it, you just know that you know it. You know that you know that you know that you know it. and it feels so good, and you feel free because of that thought. And it's maybe not a thought you would normally think, and it puts you at ease. And it just puts you in a good place of acceptance. And, Judah told me recently in a channel that most of us think that we're having all these original thoughts. The truth is, most of our thoughts are thoughts that we're grabbing out of the air, because there's, when we think a thought, it goes out into ether and it never disappears. It has an energetic quality that goes on and on forever. And so there's lots of, and angels are all around us constantly exuding thoughts towards us. And, angels aren't quite as boundary respecting and gentlemanly as we think. They don't mind influencing us and maybe crossing what we would think of as a boundary.
Really? All right. So that
No, because
means that
they
they're
love
around us all
us.
the time, right? Like that means that
Oh,
they would be
absolutely.
around us, surrounding us.
Oh, absolutely. Always there.
Yeah. Do they listen to our thoughts, or because we obviously here in this plane, we feel like we're communicating when we're physically moving our lips and speaking, right? Like we don't ever think about telekinesis or telepathy or anything like that. Like, are they just witnessing us, just our thoughts? Are they connected with us at a deeper level?
Well, I think, there's a lot of people that are a lot more influenced by them than they think. For instance, we were working with a friend the other day, a gentleman who really doesn't particularly have a spiritual path that he would say, and he has cancer. And I could see and experience his guardian angel. And basically, my understanding of it was that this gentleman is very gentle and very kind, just a very integrous, just a beautiful, lovely person. And it was my understanding that a lot of this is because of the influence of his angel. So he has actually spent so much intimate time with this angel that he's actually taken on the qualities of this angel in his personality, but he doesn't even realize it. So this was news to him, this angel of his.
Do are our guardian angels always like archangels? Like, what is the difference between like guardian angels, archangels, regular angels, or whatever the
Mhm.
categories may be?
Well, our guardian angel, Judah wants to answer that. Your guardian angel has been with you since before your conception, and was there as a part of your exercise of designing your life and your incarnation prior to your birth. And your guardian angel has never, ever, ever left your side. And we will share that many of you have been saved from many, many catastrophes that you have absolutely no physical knowledge of because of the graces of your guardian angel. And there are times some of you will say, well, if I have a guardian angel, why didn't my guardian angel protect me from this happening and this trauma and this person? And we will say that there are some instances in which you have agreed prior to your incarnation that to allow certain things to happen as a part of your evolution. And so there are times where guardian angels stand aside or they limit the amount of their intervention. And we will invite all of you to get to know your guardian angel. You may simply just begin to speak to them. Say, hello, Anjie, and Judah say that you are here. I don't know your name, but I'm going to assume, I'm going to have a little faith and trust in her message and assume that you are there. Can you please give me evidence? And you will begin to find evidence. Now, you may feel them as a warm pocket of air or a presence beside you, behind you, and so on. If you've ever sensed that someone came into the room, even though you didn't hear them, and when you turned around, of course, they were there. This is how you will experience angels. And many times they will introduce themselves to you in your sleep as well. They may come in the form or image of someone that you know and love or trust, or they may come in a more angelic form. Many times they appear in a more human form at first in order that you might feel comfortable. Now, then there are archangels, which are, you would call them the bosses. And they are the express essence of source. They are if you were to see one or experience one, you would fall on your face, not out of an untoward fear, but out of a reverence and awe, and you would be a bit stunned by their authority and presence. You would feel as if you were standing in the presence of God. And we hail to Michael. He is our boss. And he operates in total authority at all times, always from integrity and love. Then there are spirit guides, which have specialty areas. They may be teachers or trainers. They come into your life for a season to guide you in a certain area which you would like to obtain mastery. And then they may step aside for another guide then at a certain time.
Does Michael ever come through you?
Oh, yes. Yes.
What's his energy like?
Well, it's scary in a really good way. When he's come around maybe 5 or 6 times now when Chuck and I are together, and we have published those, so you can find those online. But when he comes, you feel awestruck and dumb and like there's nothing intelligent to say in front of him, and there's no answer to anything he says. And he lays everything out for you very clearly and definitively, and there's nothing in you that wants to argue with him, because you know it comes from such a place of love and high consciousness and so much authority that you just accept it. And it's awe-inspiring. I mean, sometimes it makes you feel like you want to crawl up under the chair and hide.
Does he ever come through to like your clients at all, or just you and Chuck?
Not yet. And I wonder if that will happen at some point. But I have asked, I've had people ask, can we speak to Michael or pray to Michael? And I always get a yes. And I will say, we had just a really cool story today. This will give you, okay, good. Judah wants to talk about this. Yes, we want to come back to you were saying, how do we come into this spiritual life in the middle of everyday life? You see? We want to come back to that. We talked about sleep. Now let's talk about your imagination meditation. Imagination meditation. You can begin, you see, one of the prohibitive factors for busy people, especially young people raising children, is they feel they need larger segments of time to meditate. That would be a wish we would have for you as well. But if it's not there, we would say, we can come in an instant. Don't be prohibited by that at all. Just a quick ask, and we're there. So we will give you an example, a couple of examples of this imagination meditation, which this vessel teaches. There was a young woman taking the course, and she employed the imagination meditation. She had an annual review with her boss the next day. So the evening before she went to sleep, she imagined the entire conversation beginning to end, everything that would be discussed by both parties, and the exact amount of money that she wanted, that she would ask for, and so on. And the next day she went to the review, and the whole review went exactly as she had imagined it, including the exact amount of the pay raise she received. We will tell you another story. There was a gentleman who sent a letter yesterday in West Africa, and his son, 4 years old, had malaria. and had been very sick for several days. And he said, "Father, please, please take me to the hospital." The little boy begged, and the father did not have the money to take him. And the father, of course, was distressed, very distressed, but went on to work for the day. And he remembered that he had heard this vessel say, "You can ask Judah for help anytime. Judah will adopt you, and just reach out and ask for what you want and need." And so he said, "Judah, will you please help my son?" And a few moments later, he had the thought in his mind, "What do you want to see when you get home?" And he knew this thought was from us. And it was. And he said, "I want to see my son running out of the house to meet me when I come home from work today."
Hmm.
And some hours later, as he approached the house after work, he saw his little boy outside playing with his friends, and the little boy ran to his father, and he was well. So one of the things Judah has taught is that you can begin to imagine segments of your day. So when you get up in the morning and you're laying in bed, take a minute and imagine the first segment of your day. Imagine the kids' lunches getting packed with no fuss and them being cooperative, and just imagine the whole thing exactly the way you want it to be, and then get up. And then get through that first segment of the day. And then when the next segment comes, maybe it's getting in the car to go to work. Imagine the first half of your work day. When lunch comes, take a few minutes, imagine the next part, and begin to know yourself as a creator. And so, you'll have days where things don't go the way you imagine it, but you're going to have days where you actually do see a change. You see a shift, and you go, "Oh, that's it. That's me being the creator. That's me turning the kaleidoscope. That's me letting the light of consciousness into my life and making it work the way I want it to be. That's me moving and shaping all the stuff that's going on in my life." And as you do that, you start to generate this momentum and this faith around it,
Mm-hmm.
that you can do it.
Sure. I love all of that, right? I get curious sometimes, because you hear stories of people seeing orbs. You see, there's a guy in North Carolina that can see orbs at night, and he records them on Instagram, and he talks about his story of seeing the lady, which some people would call Mother Mary. Some people would, I don't know, call it like the mother essence.
Mm-hmm.
But he calls her the lady, and she has come to him like every Easter and given him like specific messages for him. I guess my question is, like, how come there are people out there that can witness these things, but not everyone, right? Or people that are people trying too hard to have these experiences? Because it's like you especially for me, like I come across a wide spectrum of people that have amazing stories, right? And they're just like, yeah, just go ahead and ask, right? And then you ask and nothing happens, right? Are just some of us not meant to have these experiences, or are we just trying too hard?
Well, I don't think it's that I don't think anybody does anything to disqualify themselves. And I don't think there's anything that you haven't done yet that's prohibiting you. So I encourage people to never say the word that I feel stuck or feel blocked. And even speaking for you specifically, I definitely think that is in your future. Now, I don't typically see Judah. I don't see an angelic form. Now, I can tell you what I do see that might help you, because I believe you're probably already seeing these things. And as I share it with you, you'll in the coming days, you'll say, "Oh, I think I am seeing some angelic things." So I'm not having the same experiences that this gentleman's describing, but I do, sometimes I will come out of a meditative state or a channeling state, and I'll see a thick mist around me. It's like a little rain cloud came in the room. Sometimes I'll just be kind of blinded with white light, and it'll take me a few minutes for my eyes to come back into focus. Occasionally, if you watch some of our videos, sometimes you'll see lights flashing, things kind of scooting by, which could be, have some physical explanation. I don't know. But then there are other times where we actually have power surges, where the lights will go up and down while we're channeling. And that's just from the raw power surge of them in the room. So I don't see angels like that, gentlemen. Would I like to? Sure. Do I think I will? Probably. I think, that's a trajectory of a natural thing that would happen. Does it really matter to me? Not really. It really doesn't. My understanding, we're working with a guy some now named Dr. Gary Schwartz, and he's a scientist. He's Harvard and Yale trained, and he's a professor at the University of Arizona, and he's working on the angel hypothesis. And he is doing some scientific gold standard research about this. And, just on a more practical level, I think our physical eyes aren't necessarily created to see the dimension of light that they exude. Now, I have changed some things in my diet that have helped, I think, to raise my vibration. And I also put a lot of effort into having a really high vibe atmosphere and environment. And I do think that can prepare the way for angelic sights and sounds and channeling and visitation. But it's a lot of work. That means there's certain people that I don't invite over. There's certain things I don't watch or listen to in my house. I have a quantum field through focused life force energy in my home that sets a baseline of 560 level of consciousness in the house on my property at all times. I stopped eating meat. I eat, everything is fresh. These are my instructions for me. I'm not saying that it's for anybody else necessarily, but from Judah were to eat fresh off the vine, things grown above ground in view of the sun, saturated with the sunlight, with light force energy. And I eat, really, really well. And so there's a lot of care given to create a really high vibe atmosphere. I'm fortunate because I'm in a stage of life where I can do that. I don't have little kids running around all the time. But if you can make some of those adjustments, because angels they are such a high vibration. But as we do our own interior work and meditating, and we keep bumping ourselves up that scale of consciousness of Hawkins that we talked about, we put ourselves more and more in range to have contact from really high consciousness beings. And we become like, those bug lights we used to hang on the porch when we were kids.
Yeah.
That would attract bugs. We can become like that, just our heart radiating so much in that high consciousness field that angels really get attracted to us. And they know that we're open and they can work with us. And we begin to have an 1 and then 2 and then 5 and then 20 and then almost an entourage of their presence.
I love it. Mama Bear, this has been fun. I love it. I love this conversation.
I enjoyed it so much too.
How can people connect with you?
Oh, well, they can find us at thejudahchannel.com and the Judah channel on YouTube. We have a very sweet and loving family on YouTube. We post things every 2 or 3 days. Sunday nights, we're always live on YouTube and channeling and doing some cool music and different things. And one of my favorite things that we do, we have free daily quotes, and we have our staff goes through all the channels and they find those really golden nuggets, the 1 line or 2 lines that you didn't want to miss from the channel. And they send them out every day. And it's one of my favorite things to do when I roll over in the morning is read those. And but we'll take anybody come our way. We love you. We want to adopt you and be there to support you. So, and Judah's there for you. I can't answer personal emails much anymore because I have so many. But Judah's proven themselves over and over that if you ask for their help, they will come through for you. They're unlimited beings. They don't go to sleep. They don't get tired. They don't go on vacation. They don't feel annoyed by our requests. So just to ask them for help.
I love it. Anjie, thank you so much for taking the time. I absolutely adore your work and your presence and your energy and consciousness. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Trey. Such a pleasure.